simple reason that it's actually okay to be bad is that we already are bad. We have bad in us as well as good. We have ugliness and beauty. We have loveliness and nastiness. We also have dullness. We're boring. We can be mediocre. We are uninteresting in some way or for someone. We have the full spectrum of what it means to be human, and all the qualities, bad and good, of being human are in us in different proportions, in different ratios, but they're in us. So whatever parts in us is bad, or we consider bad, or the world considers bad, shunning it, ignoring it, suppressing it, denying it, is just going to undermine us. It's going to come back to us with vengeance. It's going to sabotage us. It's just not good to ignore it. So that's the ultimate message of why it's okay. That's the ultimate message behind the the statement of it's okay to be bad. So in this video, as like last month, so I'll be doing this monthly for the axis for 2 signs at a time. I was doing Virgo and Pisces, and this week is Aries and Libra. So I'll be talking about the bad qualities of Aries and bad qualities of Libras. I picked 3 of each as a way of explaining why it's okay to be those bad Arieses and bad Libra. And if you have planets in either of those signs, and that's great, and you will be able to understand, apply what I'm talking about to those particular archetypes. You will be able to also recognize, I believe, I hope so. But if you have no planets in either Aries or Libra, you will have the sign somewhere in your chart, meaning a house, right? So if you'd like to either refresh or have maybe a different take on houses, which I've been told my take on houses is, grab yourself a free PDF, which is in my About section of this video channel. Download and then go at it and see where your Aries and Libra are. And then, yeah, that will kind of help you flesh out and get more specific about your own placements of Aries and Libra and what I'm talking about, how they can relate to you. Okay, so the 3 qualities I choose every time I choose 3 qualities of each. So the bad Aries qualities that I chose are selfishness. Let me just double check my notes. Impatience and aggressiveness. And the 3 qualities of Libra that I chose are indecisiveness, codependence, and passive-aggressive. And I use that deliberately, like a third one of Aries is aggressive and Libra is passive-aggressive, and we'll talk about that. So I have spoken so much about Libra because the South Node is in Libra, and wherever we have our South Node, it's like all the shadow aspects of the archetype come up on the surface, and we are faced with like what is sabotaging us, what is undermining us, what we are ignoring, what has become a problem, what's become a stumbling block for us, a challenge, right? The South Node. So it's in Libra till January 2025. And so I have, like I say, most of my videos for the last month are about Libra and how it's all the shadow aspects of Libra. And I'm explaining basically why it's always what astrology does. It's like tells us why something is, which immediately then creates compassion and or self-compassion. So I have already spoken about a lot of it, so I'll touch on it here as well. But if you have a heavy Libra in your chart, or you just want to kind of dive into your Libra shadow and really work with the energies of the universe at the moment because of the South Node in Libra, like I say, go and binge on those. I will link most of them. I'll try to find most of them that are relevant, but if not, just like scroll through my pages and through my videos and you'll find them. But of Aries I spoke not as much, although I did speak of Chiron in Aries at some point, and that's also I'll be touching on that today. So let me start with Aries. So what did I say? The first one, selfish. Selfish is, if you, as you may have heard me speak before, I always go to the etymology of the word to understand what's going on there, its original meaning, like what was the original intention behind it. And that takes me usually back to either Latin or Greek, or it could be pan-European, Indo-European languages, like I think Sanskrit, but I'm not 100% sure, don't quote me this. But anyway, I go back to the roots, and 9 out of 10 times I'm just like, oh my God, well, we have butchered it, we have bastardized it, we have misused it and abused it, a word, right? So selfish is one of them. Well, it is. So the word essentially means self is the self, right? But ish is the suffix is there to say to belong to. And so the meaning of selfish really remove all the judgment, the societal judgment, individual judgment of the word selfish, and it's like the evil word, right, or the trait, as it's perceived as being greedy and just not not interested in others, and not being actively unpleasant, to say the least, or nasty and destructive to others and all that. So so remove all that and just pause and consider the etymology of it, which is essentially to belong to the self. Can you hear the shift in meaning, the shift in energy, the shift in value of that word? So, and that is almost like a primal definition of Aries, because Aries is the first sign, and it has no one and nothing. And this is always, when I speak of Aries, or any sign rather, I speak of archetypes. So an archetype is different than a person who's an Aries or Sun in Aries or whatever, right? Or even any other planet in Aries, because the moment Sun is in Aries, we have Leo Aries combo, and it's not anymore pure Aries, right? That's why I don't like to. I always like to remind everyone who's listening that I'm not talking about you if you're an Aries, because if you're an Aries, that means you have Sun, and that means that Aries is tinted or tainted with Leo. If you have Venus, then like I do, then it's tainted and tinted with Libra or Pisces, or sorry, Taurus, and etc. etc. You get what I'm saying. That's why when I speak of all the signs, I'm always only talking about the function of the archetype. The moment it becomes your personal story, you have to add layers to it, and it changes, and it refines it, and it tweaks it, and it's not anymore what I'm saying. But in principle, the reason I love speaking about astrology like this, and I'm somewhat on a tangent here, but I'll come back eventually, I'm sure, is that this is to me why I call myself the crone, astrology crone. That's what astrology is for, to make sense of the world and life and myself, but beyond just like my personality, like beyond my, like to understand the bigger themes, the bigger questions, the bigger challenges, the bigger stories, right? That we either tell ourselves or we've been told and whatever, right? And it's like, it is wonderful life manual. It's philosophy, but far more real, really. It's just far more real, even though, yeah, maybe it's an odd thing to say when you speak of astrology, because it's like an esoteric science and, often considered something, intangible and not measurable in the scientific sense, like factual or whatever. So that's why I love it. So back to Aries. So whenever I talk about any of the signs, like I will today, and I've done previous and will in the future, I'm speaking of us humans. So irrespective of our individual signs, how we struggle or love, basically, what is our relationship to an archetype? And so Aries, back to the point of this video, that it's okay to be bad, that it's okay to be selfish. So this is the first trait of Aries that I'm talking about, that it's considered bad, is like we struggle as humans, and I'm sure you will relate to, you might be one of those humans that actually personally struggle with that word and you consider it the evil or something bad, whatever, right? So it's us having a problem with Aries archetype, that particular trait of it, right? And sure, it's been there, our experience of it has come from what we may have, as in today's world, 20th century, 20th, 21st century people maybe are going, oh, well, that was from an Aries person coming and therefore blah, blah. That's where we really stray, if you ask me. That's really an unhealthy, or rather unhelpful, unconstructive, not to say destructive way of using astrology. Anyway, that aside, so the selfishness, the point or the reason we struggle with selfishness is because really at that point of Aries, or rather at that point of the evolution of ego, of the individuation of the self, of one's personal growth, at the stage of Aries, which is at the very start of it, there is no other. Yeah, there is no other. There is only the self, and therefore it's such quality to belong to oneself and to know that instinctively to be okay with oneself. This is the beauty of Aries, but it jars the rest of particularly the Libra and onwards, but particularly the Libra, but also Capricorn and Cancer, because that's the axis, the cardinal square. That's the fullest picture. Well, the fullest picture is the whole chart. So Aries is, like I say, jars the rest of the chart because it truly is just about the self. But that's correct for Aries. And in the previous videos, I think the previous, as a batch record them, when I talked about Leo and how it's okay, absolutely essential for Leo to be all about me, right? Look at me. That's essential at that level of our journey of self-growth, evolution, whatever you want to call it. So, but do you understand why? That's the piece. Like, if you understand why that is, then you can understand the beauty and the necessity and the value of selfishness. But after you have reframed the meaning, so you have removed the judgment, you have removed Libra judgment, because that's coming from the fear, and I'll talk about that when I talk about Libra. And now you look at the pure, the kind of the essence of that word, that is to belong to the self. And that's the beauty of Aries. That's, we all need to belong to ourselves first. It's a first sign. Until you belong to yourself, you cannot belong to anyone else, right? It's like, or you, if you do, it's unconscious, and therefore all kinds of, it's conducive to all kinds of misuses and abuses, intentional or unintentional. But when you're not in it, when you're not aware of it, then it's like up for grabs for anyone to do whatever they want with it being you, right? Being the self. So yeah, you get why it's wonderful to be selfish. So I hope you're selfish. And I know in today's world, and particularly as we move towards 2027, let me just take that note here. We're moving towards individualism, but in a healthy way. We've lived long enough now not to be any more greedy and grabby and all that stuff, right? But it's all about tending to the self first in order to tend to give the goodness to the world. The other piece, impatient. Now, impatient, it all ultimately stems from the fact that Aries is first, and it doesn't really, it's not even aware of the other. It's not even, there isn't the other, right? So impatience is when he meets the other. Because, and when he meets any, in fact, it's not just the other as a person, but anything that kind of confronts it and slows it down. Because the point of Aries, where its fire, where its life force lives in the immediate, in the immediacy, in the immediate experience of the self. So we haven't got to Taurus yet, or Gemini, etc., right? Aries stage, we are in it, like we are. It's like being in whatever you're in it, you're immediately in contact with it. And so if Aries is in an experience, what Aries misses then is that the whatever is in the way is also part of the experience, but it feels like an obstacle that creates a distance between the immediacy of the experience of something, so that something else is in the way of that something. Yeah. So this is because Aries is unaware of anyone else, and so Saturn would be, or the Capricorn, or the Saturn or Capricorn are the kind of the hardest sort of obstacle the Aries will meet. Other Libra is also another, but it's more fluid, being air, right? But with Capricorn, it's like and Saturn, it's like solid, right? So the square between the two is the hardest, not the hardest. Every square is hard in itself, but this one is physically hard. There is a real sense of friction and sense of, like something's just up against something you can't so easily move. And it's in the way of your immediate experience wherever you're moving towards. But what Aries misses, and he misses because it's not as evolved, I don't mean this in any derogatory sense, but it's in a, you have a baby who's not running. No one's shaming the baby for not being able to run, right? It's just how it is. In that sense, I mean unevolved. Doesn't have the skill, Aries in itself, doesn't have awareness, let's even call it that better, of all the rest of the steps there needs to be, and it's only seeing it as an obstacle, and therefore it's impatient. It gets impatient. But the point is that that's okay for Aries. So wherever you have Aries, whether it's a house, like I say, only empty house, or And like I said, grab my free PDF on the houses in the about section of my video channel. Or if it's you have planets, all these planets, it's okay to be impatient. Eventually, you will learn, or even not, and that's okay too. But you will easily, or rather likely, probably learn to, you know, be more patient, because you will just stop being either fun, or it will be too draining of your life force being so important to Aries, you know, or maybe, like I say, maybe not. And that's the piece, even if he ever doesn't, just remember that that's absolutely essential. That's who Aries is. Okay, and the third piece, aggressive. Now, aggressive is, I have a family member who's like, yeah, I've been talking to someone about this actually through their chart, and it's kind of fitting, or rather, it's fresh in my mind. So I'm going to use that example, not the personal example, but just the kind of the lesson from it, which is that the aggressiveness of Aries comes from that fire, that life force, the need to expand it, not as in to spend it, rather, not like a Jupiter expansion, but to spend it. It needs to physically be active. It needs to be that life force needs to go somewhere, and there is so much of it. So that particular person has so much in Aries, and I was talking to whoever had to deal with that person, like the reason is because they don't have enough outlets to spend it, to use up the energy. So it's pent up energy that is just then aggressive. It's just like it needs to come out, but it's coming out in ways that it's obviously not. And that's probably the biggest in my worldview and my morals, which I mentioned maybe here and there, which is that anything goes as long as it's consensual. And so aggression, when it's not consensual, it's absolutely unacceptable. So that's the kind of the starkest, I think, of Aries is bad traits. And again, I use bad because it's ultimately just energy that doesn't know where to go, and it's suppressed. So just think of any time you have had, and we'll talk about Libra in a moment, passive aggression, which is a different way of doing it, but it's ultimately the same principle. It's the energy has been pent up and has been suppressed, and it has nowhere to go, and it just, comes out in aggression, in violence. In fact, I'm going to start with that third piece because we finished with aggression with Aries, so we are now moving to Libra, passive aggression. So when Libra, because if you think about it, all the life force of that fire, right, of that, when it comes to Libra, is gone, in the sense that something else gives life force to Libra, which is air. First and foremost, it's air, and and also relationships, and just like ordering things, like in the societal sense, in like externals, like how things appear and how the rules of engagement and that kind of thing. So it's not just relationships, but it's like what underlines them, the contracts that go there. So that's air, thinking and words, right, and all that. So that's what gives Libra life force. Where in Aries we have the life force, which is pure fire, like also sexual energy, but not. It can obviously to do with actual sex, but it's that energy of creation in the most immediate, again, sense, in its rawest, in its most fundamental. There's another word, primal, even maybe. Remember, it's the first, it's the spark. So now we're moving to Libra, and so if we had aggression here as a response to pent up life force that has nowhere to go, we have with Libra, we call that passive aggression, because Libra doesn't have that forcefulness which comes from the fire element. If you think of air, I mean, sure, there is forcefulness of air if I'm looking at elements now, and weather and stuff, but let's stick with the metaphor as I just put it. So air and Libra don't have the same forcefulness, so they will. So it's essentially a passive sign. It's not actually. Sorry, what I mean by passive there, I think ultimately the conflict or the problem or the badness of passive aggression is that actually aggression is meant to be aggressive, like in your face, still bad, right? But that's Aries piece. But this is added another layer. It's like another, listen to the language. It's like Libra language, another, like there is another person that is creating, or rather inspiring the passivity, because you don't want to scare off someone. You don't want to, because Libra can't be without the other. I mean, in this badness, in this bad lands, right, or whatever, of the signs that I'm currently talking about. So doesn't want to get rid of the other. So he needs to keep the other with Libra, right? And therefore he needs to be passive so it doesn't scare him off. But it's ultimately still not, ultimately the root of it is because Libra is not getting what Libra needs. So it would be either peace and harmony and pleasantries or fairness, or not being listened to, not doesn't feel equal, doesn't feel fairly treated and all that. So it's getting what it wants by being passive aggressive. But passivity is essential because it allows, or rather it ensures that the other still stays, right? And so you can see why Libra cannot do it any other way, right? So that again means it's okay. I mean, and when I say okay, again, let me just remind you, it's like, if you are that way, first and foremost, don't shame yourself. And it's like, if you think of life, like all the relationships that you may have and wherever you have been passive aggressive, maybe not all, but some, I imagine, were not really, so the other people in your life, some of people in your life were not keen on it, may have even left you for it, may have even really kind of, stood their ground and wouldn't let you be passive, called you on it and all that, called you out on it. And others were happy to go along. This is ultimately why it's okay. Because if you're happy, consent, right? It's consent. And this is the Libra piece, right? It's like anything goes, Aries, as long as it's consensual. Now, the problem is that the consent is not always like obvious and in your face, or rather clear, rather written or in your face. But if it's happening, it's there. It's there on a level, and I'm talking grown-ups here now. Obviously, I'm not going into kind of darker waters of, anyway, I'm not going to go there, but just like two grown-ups in a normal relationship where, where people say, just think of any marriage or relationship, like I say, even friendships, like, there's a victim and there is a perpetrator, but really both are essentially signed up for it. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any, because that's what I mean, like a certain kind of relationship, and really nothing stands in the way of them being separate. They don't have children, they don't have mortgage, they don't have, they're just friends. So the dependencies are all kinds of other things. I'm actually stepping into codependency now. Okay. But my point there is that being okay, meaning if the other person is still in a relationship and, like I say, there's no physical force or anything like that, right? On a level, they're in agreement with it, even if they won't admit it, right? So that's what I mean. You need to worry about yourself. You need to first, if ever, need to go, actually, I don't think this is nice. I don't like this. I don't actually like myself being this way. So I am going to, and again, that's not accepting yourself. So you need to come from the place of first being okay with it, which comes first from the moment of you going, I don't like this. And then it's like, well, okay, I am like this. Then you become okay with it. And then after that, it's like, I have a whole course on shadow work, so I'm not going to go into this now, but essentially the acceptance is half a job done. And then you start to change as you accept yourself for all the badness, for all this, passive aggression. Eventually you see, and I again speak from experience, utterly and totally, that the other people will just stop playing the victim, or so you see what I mean? But you can only work on yourself. That's why it's okay not worrying about others in that context. Starting with yourself is essential. Okay, codependency. So this is partly where I was talking in another video, which I'll link below, why it's so hard to be Libra or to do Libra archetype, because it's for the first time we're actually coming out and meeting the other person for the first time. Like, we have 6 iterations of our self and developing who we are, and then we come out. And like I said, that video is excellent. I will link it below. It's like, and we are like, just don't know what to do. So the way we're figuring out what works, what doesn't, or rather what to do, right, is what works and what doesn't, and how do we decide that something works? Because it feels okay, it feels good, it feels safe, right? So when we base on those, and that's what I mean, it's for the first time, right? We have no other ways of knowing how to be with another based other than for these reasons that are ultimately based in fear. And I know this is probably very controversial, or certainly unpopular maybe, but I do believe that we as a species are still at a level of working from fear. We really don't have a society that is love and peace. We don't. I think personally, anyone who does think that, I don't know, I'm not very realistic, I suppose. I would be polite to say that. So I think, so the codependency piece is we just end up depending on the other for that sense of safety, because we have orchestrated our ways of being with them and they with us, right? That keeps each other feeling safe. And without it, we don't know how to be without another. Because after being in Libra, it's like, how do you become independent while being with other people? It's like because the moment you try to become that, you become Aries. And this is what I mean. This is why this is so important, this whole conversation, while we are Chiron in Aries in particular, and during the next, like I say, till January 2025. It's like, no one likes Aries. I don't mean, again, you, if you're a sign Aries, sun sign Aries. I just mean an archetype, because it's just so harsh. It's like, harsh. It's like the independence is harshness. It feels harsh to someone who wants to belong. It feels like, well, if you're independent with me, then you don't need me. So why should I be with you? Or not even why should I? It's not even like it's like, how can I be with you? It's a sense of rejection, right? So the moment you become Aries, more independent, the relationship is threatened. We don't know yet how to be in intimate, close relationships while being independent and being Aries-like. Okay, so that's why codependency is so entrenched in Libra. For all those reasons, can we not just feel so much compassion for Libra archetype? Not Sun in Libra particularly, nothing particularly in Libra, archetype Libra. And the last one, which is indecisiveness. And this is where I personally, I love this about Libra in a way. Because this is where I feel it's somewhat of a wisdom of a Libra that comes forth, because decisiveness is defining something and closing it and saying that's it, that's the end. And that's kind of anti-life in a way, bear with me. So I think this is kind of signposting to, not kind of, I think to me this is signposting to Pisces. The indecisiveness is like, well, of course I can't settle on anything because I can see the beauty or the good point about everything I have considered, right? So of course I can't decide. I can see this. Now, of course, at the root of sometimes of this decisiveness is ultimately the fear of separation, which is Aries again. It's like, if I decide this thing, then I have to say no to something else. So we are back to codependency, or to the Aries piece where we don't want that break. Decision means saying yes to something, means saying no to something else. So that's why. But I'm personally, just as me, Maya, myself, with my own chart and my own filters and my own biases, I love this in Libra, because about Libra archetype, because like I say, I mean, I obviously would probably drive me nuts if I had to live with someone's indecisiveness like day in, day out. And it's like, you can't, right? I get that. So I would be too frustrated with it, I'm sure. But as a way of being, as a way of looking at the world, I get the reasons. It's like, of course, there is a pro in all of it. All of it is actually a good thing, a good choice, because it is, and it can be. So yeah, so I feel like I say it's something that Libra's onto something here, big time. But that's what I mean. It's on to Pisces. It's like heading towards Pisces. That is signposting us to. It's like it's like the path is the chart, right? And at that point, it's like, huh, I can feel the wisdom of this, even though, yeah, it's on day-to-day, in day-to-day living is just, but actually it's wise. It's actually deep wisdom, and it's love. Again, love is Libra, a form of love, which again, at this stage, I'm not sure when. I think in the future we'll have in a few weeks' time there will be a video of what love is. But make sure you watch it, because if you're interested in the subject, because yeah, there is Libra is not love, but it's a love. It's not the love. So anyway, but yeah, this is where we get the good flavors of it, and I think indecisiveness is actually, nothing's wrong with any of it, but personally, like I say, I have a affinity for it. Okay, so that's it. Thank you so much. This yeah, if you want to stick around, subscribe if you like what I share and create here. Let me know in the comments, and just let me know where you stand with all of this I shared here.